Hello and welcome to another episode of Century 21 Property Done Properly. We've been away for a few weeks. In that period of time, we met a few different people and we thought we'd take a slightly different route with our podcast for the next few. So I'm delighted to introduce to you Sally Desborough, who I've met a couple of times now. Sally is a leading expert when it comes to mental health awareness in the workplace. Good morning, Sally. How are you?
Good morning. Yes, I'm well, thank you. It's Friday, which is nice. It's been a great week. Nice to be at home on Friday, catching up on a few bits and pieces. So
Yeah,
yeah, all good. Thank you.
be nice to have some sunshine, which we were just discussing.
Wouldn't it just? Let's not go down that rabbit hole. I could probably rant a little bit about the current weather.
That's a whole podcast in itself. Um,
Really.
so you were introduced by my colleague. Mental health and mental health awareness is something that's really close to me. I would be lying if I said I've never had struggles in the past, or
Mm.
recently, to be fair. So I thought this was a great place to start, and we got connected through LinkedIn for a mutual contact. It's really important, particularly in work life, because that's where we spend the majority of our time. So where do you fit in, Sally? How did you get into working with people, particularly in the workplace?
Okay, so my before I got into the mental health awareness and kind of training space, I worked in HR. So I was in HR for 11 plus years, starting my career back in 2008. So I worked a lot with people then. And sometimes I wonder why I didn't become a nurse or something, because I've got such strong values around caring and compassion and empathy. But yeah, I got into the HR world, and the key driving change for me in terms of my motivation to do more in the mental health and wellbeing space. It's primarily my lived experience of mental health. Back in 2016, I was diagnosed with depression, along with symptoms of anxiety, but the depression was very much, it was much more strong for me. And it was a really, really difficult time. And it pretty much took me the whole of 2016 to get better. And just loads of light bulbs started shining quite brightly for me during that time, that no one was really talking about mental health or poor mental health. And I'd never been one to speak about my emotions anyway. Even as a kid, I just kind of held on and suppressed and just kind of, yeah, held on to everything. But that didn't really serve me well in 2016. And my mental health just completely spiraled out of control. And I kind of thought, what would have created that safety for me to talk more about what was going on? And I really kind of thought, naturalizing and normalizing the mental health conversation, raising much more awareness that we all have it. You can experience a wobble at any given point in time. And talking about it is better than bottling things up, but we know how tricky that can be. But I came out of that experience with the belief, had I spoken up sooner, I wouldn't have become as unwell as I did. So, that motivation, that drive, really, let's raise awareness. People aren't making it up. It's a really, really difficult thing to go through when you go through such poor mental health as well. I did speak to some people about it eventually. I kind of just broke down. It got to a point where I was just so unwell. I just didn't know what to do. There were some amazingly supportive and understanding, non-judgmental people. And I kind of thought, oh, people do understand it. People do get it, but we're just not talking about it. So I don't
Yeah.
know if the safety was there. And then equally, I did have some really difficult and damaging, painful conversations. And I guess that realised my fears around, the fear of judgment. What are people going to think of me? They're not going to think I can cope or whatever. So I had the complete, two ends of the spectrum in terms of those conversations. And I just thought, how do we do more of the positive and supportive and tackle those deeply stigmatizing ones that just make you feel 100 times worse? So, when I came through that in the back of my mind, I thought we need to do much more to raise mental health awareness. I didn't know how I was going to do that. My initial focus was I just want to get better and get back to work in some kind of sense of normality. And then a year later, I was approached by my employer. So I moved employers, and they said, you've got the lived experience, you've written so many different workshops, you've got the experience of delivering programs. We think you'd be ideal to become a mental health first aid instructor. So I was really lucky to be sponsored to become an MHFA instructor. So that happened at the end of 2017. And I did that for 2 years alongside my full-time HR roles before I kind of burnt out and decided to park the HR corporate career and focus all my time, commitment and energy on the mental health agenda. And I think naturally through my HR worked with lots and lots of people, supporting those with mental health challenges, supporting managers as well. We did so much work with managers and writing workshops for managers, because as soon as mental health was mentioned, The phone was picked up. Oh, HR, they've mentioned mental health. I don't want to say the wrong thing. So we kind of did loads of
Yeah,
work with our managers, coaching, mentoring, and writing workshops as well. So you kind of got a combination of the personal experience, which was probably the biggest driving force, but loads around, those conversations at work through my professional experience as well.
yeah, excellent. Well, I've been a manager of several different estate agency offices and other bits as well. And, I think as a manager or a leader of a team, there's things that we should be looking out for, isn't there? And when someone's struggling, what would you say those signals are? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for the question. And again, I think managers really want to feel empowered to be able to spot those signs and
Yeah,
have conversations. I think the key thing for managers is you have to know your people really well, because warning signs are so broad for all sorts of different people. So if we know people's version of normal, we're
yeah,
always looking out for the change from that normal. So if
yeah,
somebody's, loud and exuberant and really chatty and outgoing and always organising socials, and then they start to become really quiet and withdrawn. They're not really engaging all that much. Equally, somebody's version of normal, which is a happy place, is being quite quiet and reserved and keeping themselves to themselves. But you might start to notice even further withdrawal, or indeed, frustration or outbursts, or more emotions appear to be running on the surface. So I think that's the biggest key, really, is looking out for a person's, change to their
yeah,
usual self. I think there's a huge challenge when we work remotely and then in a much more hybrid way, because cameras can mask a lot. I could be sitting on here, for half an hour smiling and chatting away, and actually behind closed doors, I'm not in such a good
yeah,
place. So there will be other things you're picking up on in terms of how I'm engaging, how I'm using my technology, what's my usual things like procrastination. Sometimes people overwork, so you might notice, emails at 1 o'clock in the morning. How are they communicating? Somebody keeps volunteering for every single project. Or you might see the quality of somebody's work completely dip and dive as well. So yeah, I think there's so much there are so many different warning signs, but it's about what someone's normal and then what's the change to that.
yeah. And what would I just thought of something else while we were talking there, and I thought, how many times do you try and approach someone before it becomes an annoyance for them? Um, and there might not be anything wrong. I
Yeah,
think the thing with, there's a lot when it's mental health awareness, you should text a friend and then text them again, are you sure? It
yeah.
there's a limit, isn't there? Asking once probably isn't going to do
It's a
it, but asking 6 or 7 times is probably going to earn you something else that you don't want.
It's a tricky one, right? Somebody might be very willing and open for a conversation. Some people might not recognize there's a problem, and
Yeah,
others may not be ready for a conversation either. So, we can, ask how somebody is, how they're feeling at the moment. I always say never be afraid to ask how are you twice, because ultimately our stock answer is, yeah, I'm fine, thanks, and how are you?
mm,
We've all said fine, and fine's not so it's not really a feeling. It's just kind of like yeah, I'm fine. So I always say never be afraid to ask twice, but maybe, start using your reflections within that. Oh, well, I'm wondering how you're doing at the moment, because I noticed more recently you seem a lot more withdrawn from the group. I mean, if it's a friend, or I noticed you're a lot more quiet on our team meeting the other day. I just wanted to check in to see that you're all right. And
yeah,
somebody might be saying back to us, oh, I just slept really badly. And if you notice it again, you might notice it a few times over the following weeks. I checked in with you a few weeks ago. I know you said you weren't sleeping that well. I have noticed it again more recently. I just wanted to check in. Are you sure? Are you sure you're all right at the moment? But if someone is kind of really shutting down the conversation, they might not be ready for it. So we can't force people to engage in a conversation they're not ready for. And so we might be saying, oh, it's great to hear that you're okay at the moment. If it's all right, I might just check in with you next week, just to reconnect and see how you're doing.
yeah,
And so I think it's about showing that patience, being respectful, not trying to force. Yeah, and with the text message kind of thing, it might be that, it would be great to catch up over the phone whenever you've got some free time. Maybe we just connect in another way if you're
yeah.
really not convinced that somebody is okay, perhaps.
Excellent. What help what help can we offer if somebody says, yes, I'm struggling at the moment, I'm not sleeping, I'm feeling quite down, got low mood. What help can we offer them initially?
So I think the biggest thing is, our natural human instinct is to try and jump in and fix it. But
Yeah,
actually what people tend to need more than anything else initially is listening. And listening is really, really hard, giving people the time and space to talk about how they're feeling, because so often we do jump into the fix it mode of, oh, you're not sleeping. So, have you thought about your sleep hygiene and what you do in the hour before you sleep and X, Y, and Z? But
Yeah.
actually really taking the time to explore, somebody's feelings, if they're feeling, I'm really struggling at the moment, I'm feeling low and quite anxious and, my sleep's all disrupted, asking, how long's that been going on for? Tell me more about what's happening for you. And just really giving somebody the time and space to talk about all of that
Yeah.
can be so helpful. Sometimes we get so stuck on the problem is this. And when we get stuck on the problem, that's when we go into fix it mode. But if we start to explore the feelings and really taking the time to listen, to understand, and that's what's so great. It's something I say on all of my training courses. We're listening to understand. We're not listening to fix. We're not listening to provide solutions or solve people's problems. Let's listen to understand what's the person feeling and experience what's happening for them. And then let's get to that point once we've explored all of that, put the puzzle together.
Yeah.
And what do you think is going to help you in feeling better? Is there any specific support that you think is going to be helpful for you in feeling better and moving forward? And is there anything that I can do to help you with that? So we do get to that kind of support mode, but initially it's about time and space, listening to understand, and doing that in a really non-judgmental way as well. If someone feels judged, the conversation will just shut down and it will stop. So we have to park any judgments, challenge any judgments, and create that safety just by being open-minded and listening to this person's reality ultimately, because it is their reality, it is their world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the steps, and certainly a process I've been down in the past, is that you might need to get some counselling in there. You go and see your doctor, he or she might recognise that, you need a break from work. I think this is probably always a grey area for people. Doctor gives someone 2 weeks off work to recover. Is there support that we can offer during that period of time? And contact as well. How often do you contact somebody who's been, I don't know, say signed off work for 2 to 4 weeks? You
Yeah.
wouldn't be phoning people up every other day or sending text messages and emails. What would you suggest? I suppose again it might be individual, but if there's some guidelines, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a one size that fits all. It's going to be dependent on each person. But again, when I put my HR hat on, I'd support businesses, and it'd be quite a large business, and I'd all of a sudden have a manager coming to me and say, "Oh, so and so is coming back to work today," and I'd be like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't even know I'm sick at the moment. How long have they been off for?" Oh, three
Yeah.
months. Great, 3 months. Okay, good to know. And what contact have you had with this person? None, no contact whatsoever. That is not an ideal situation. The amount of stress and anxiety that can cause, does the person feel cared for? They'll probably start to feel really disconnected and worried about the status of their job and, what's the team doing and what do they think
Yeah.
of me? There can be all sorts of things going on there. And I think if someone has been signed off for 2 to 4 weeks, we've received that fit note. It might be, popping that text message or sending an email, or it could be a call, saying, "Thank you so much for sending the fit note across. I have received it. I noticed that you've been signed off for a month. It sounds like that is exactly what you need. I think it might be worthwhile to consider how we're going to communicate with one another, keep in touch so I can update you with anything that's happening in the business, any support that we can give you." And then just have that open dialogue and ask questions, because for one person it might be, can we just text each other on a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m? Somebody else, it might be, a phone call would be good. It's nice to kind of connect in that way. For others, it might be, let's exchange some emails every week or every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I think it's about trying to agree the communication strategy as far in advance as possible and doing that with the person as well, because it's going to feel different for different people. And if someone's been signed off for 3 months, it might be more regular. Actually, once a month I think will be enough. It's taking me so much energy just to get out of bed, so the thought of having phone calls at the moment is really hard, but we can always revisit the communication strategy as well. So I think it's about asking those good, helpful, open questions, asking, what does that look like for you, and trying to get something in place that's been agreed.
Excellent. So in terms of ongoing, so someone is ready to come back to work, or their time off has expired. What would you I guess again, it's going to be individual, but just a basic guideline of getting somebody back into the workplace, because, again, from my experience, sometimes jumping straight into that, back to that 9 to 5, 9 to 6 job is not exactly what you need. What would you recommend there?
Yeah, I mean, it can be hugely stressful if you've been off sick for a period of, it could be 2 weeks or a month or whatever. Coming back to work can feel quite daunting sometimes.
Yeah,
And, when you've been recovering from poor mental health, going back into 9 to 5 or 9 till 6 can be massively overwhelming. So again, engaging in a conversation with someone, in the lead up to that return or on day one, how do you see work planning out for you today? What does your day look like? What do you feel you're going to be able to do? Is there anything that you think is going to be particularly challenging? How long do you feel you can work today? For a lot of people, it is about that phased return. So it might be starting on 3 or 4 hours a day. You might do that for a week or two, and then you might start to build that up as somebody starts to build their confidence and they feel
yeah,
they're getting up to speed and maybe their energy levels are much improving. So again, I think there's a lot of back and forth with these conversations. That won't necessarily be one size that fits all.
yeah,
It might be different tasks. It might be, that client might be quite difficult to manage. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do that for the first couple of weeks. Would it be okay if X, Y, and Z? So I think again, it's about having that open dialogue. Um, if it's a particularly complex case, things like, occupational health
hmm,
can be really helpful. So you can seek their advice and guidance from a medical perspective to make
yeah,
sure that people are being returned to work safely and appropriately, all underpinned by medical guidance and advice. So, you're not meant to be a mental health expert or a medical expert as a manager or a team player, but we draw on those expertise
yeah,
to make sure we are appropriately and safely returning people to work. And sometimes it has to be said, people, it's not just about people not wanting to come back to work, but sometimes people do throw themselves right in. And that's not necessarily good in terms of the longer term plan and sustainability of that return to work. Because people, no, I just want to get back into it. It's kind of like,
yeah,
let's be a little bit sensible. I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
sure coming back to your 9 till 6 is wise. Let's have a conversation and maybe, we can get that occupational advice coming in as well to support
yeah.
that return to work.
So people, obviously, some people go through a program of counselling as well. That might be, in some instances, I know 12 weeks counselling. My personal view, somebody there would be returning to the workplace, would that I would give them the day if they had counselling face to face or over Zoom, which is becoming more and more common.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect them to come into work that day. That would be my view because I know those sessions can be quite draining mentally
Yeah.
and emotionally. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's all about being flexible, treating
Yeah,
people as humans, adults. I think sometimes when we get caught up in the busyness, we almost forget the human element and aspect of things. And
yeah,
actually, if I was, having a counselling session, it could be potentially quite emotional and draining. Am I really going to be able to give my full focus and attention to my work for the rest of the day, or actually am I best off having a little bit of flexibility? So yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. We know how counselling sessions can be so powerful and a great gift, but going through that process equally can be quite shattering and exhausting. So
yeah,
again, that can be all part of, that agreement in terms of, being more flexible and putting reasonable adjustments in place in law. That's what you call it.
yeah,
And that would be no different if someone was going for their heart condition checkup. You wouldn't be
yeah,
saying to them, you need to be straight back at work and X, Y, and Z. Something got, an MRI scan. They're going to need to take the time that they need to take the time to go off that scan, like anyone would need the kind of
yeah,
counselling as well. So we think about it in those kind of terms. Of course, it's not exactly the same. It's not even near close, but we have to be reasonable and treat people as humans. And if they have a need, they have a need. And ultimately, if they're going through counselling, it's part of their path to moving forward and getting better again.
yeah. Fantastic. There's lots of courses out there that managers and well, any team member can undertake, or any person in the workplace, I guess. We
Yeah.
work on a system, and that's available to the people within our business. Is there any courses out there that you would say are really good, so people can gain more knowledge on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are loads of courses out there. Mental health first aid is something that I deliver a lot to people, and the feedback out of
Yeah,
that course is, it's really fantastic because people do feel much more confident and skilled to spot warning signs and engage in the conversations as well. So there's a lot of kind of practical elements to the course where you're practicing your listening skills, asking those questions, seeing what it feels like to ask different questions, and all these scenarios are very, very different. So it helps you to adapt and maybe be a bit creative. So it's a fantastic 2-day program. there's 1 day and half day options as well. So sometimes, when you're working in sales, you're kind of like 2 days. Oh, it's a bit much, but I might be able to afford like 4 hours or half a day or something like that. But
Yeah.
you've got so many different providers who also write bespoke. So if you wanted to do, 1 hour or 2 hour workshop just to start building the mental health awareness, and then 3 months later, let's build more on top of that as well. So I
Yeah.
think there are so many options, and mental health awareness is at the forefront of so many people's minds now. So
Yeah.
it's about working out what's going to be good for us as a business. How does it fit in with our kind of people strategy, and how do we, get people upskilled and being able to recognise that? So I think there are lots of options. I think MHFA, mental health first aid, a lot of people have probably heard of, but yeah, there are loads of other options as well.
Excellent. That's really kind. I think this is a topic that I think we could talk probably for hours about. I think the 20-minute, 25-minute window that we do these podcasts in probably doesn't give us, there's probably a lot more questions. I think, if people want to contact you directly, LinkedIn is the place where I did it from. So if they think
Yeah.
they're covering the base at work where they perhaps should be here from both sides, then probably get in contact with you over LinkedIn. Is that the best way?
I would say LinkedIn is probably where I spend most of my time. I'm
Yeah.
not a huge social media, not going to lie. It's not something that I grew up with. So I've had to do a lot of adapting. But LinkedIn, actually, I really love the kind of professional nature, but the way you can also connect. So certainly
Yeah.
that's probably where I spend most of my time.
Yeah, excellent. I'm certainly going to stay in touch with you. And I think it's important at this stage to say if you are struggling at the moment and you feel like you've got nobody to talk to, then you've got the Samaritans that are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a free service. That's 116123. You've introduced me to another one today that I hadn't heard of. That's
Yeah.
called,
Shout.
yeah,
They are a text service. They're
brilliant.
open 24/7 as well, and it's free. And you text the word shout to the number 85258 at the middle of your phone. And after a few minutes, you would be connected to a volunteer, just in the same way as you would Samaritans, but it's a text service rather than voice call.
You might find that a bit easier, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, and it might be more discreet. Someone wants to be more discreet rather than being, heard on the phone or something. And we know so many of us have phones and we like to text, and it's great for young people as well.
Yeah.
Young people are texting, so yeah, it's good to know these different options.
Excellent. Sally, thank you for your time. It's taken us a little while to get this in the diary. Busy person. Definitely going to have you on again, and we'll cover it from, as I say, the other angle. So thank you very
Right.
much for your time. I hope you get to see some sunshine at the weekend. And I'm going to stay in touch with you, definitely, that's for sure. So thank you very
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
No problem.